Hey friends, I'm Savannah.
And I'm Claire. Welcome to the On Purpose and For a Purpose podcast.
Have you ever found yourself doubting your purpose? Or maybe you felt lost in the middle of everyday moments? We've totally been there too.
Exactly, and that's why we're here. We believe diving deep into God's Word gives you the tools you need to confidently live out your purpose.
Your purpose isn't just something you find once and then forget about. It's in your everyday moments. Each week, we'll be exploring how you can seek and apply God's Word with confidence, helping you live a life that's truly on purpose and for a purpose.
So wherever and however you're listening, we hope this podcast leaves you inspired and empowered.
So grab your headphones and let's get started. Hey Claire.
Hey Sav.
How you doing today?
Pretty good. We're a little under the weather, but we're making it.
I know. I'm so sorry. I feel like everybody is.
Yeah, I think it's just that season.
Well, I hope this makes you feel better because today we have a special guest with us today. I'm personally so very excited. We are continuing on our Women on a Purpose series. We have had 2 previous episodes that go along with the series, and we just think we like it so much. We're just going to keep doing it and just see how many women's stories we can hear and to just hear from you where you are right now. And today we have one of my very best friends, so I'm super biased because I think this is going to be your new favorite episode, but we have Maggie Davis with us today, and I love our story of how just our friendship came to be so much because we grew up in the same town. We're both from Tupelo, Mississippi. We went to the same high school. I'm a couple years older, but that doesn't really matter. But we just never really crossed paths in high school. And then we crossed paths in college and we're in the same sorority that Claire and I were in. Maggie was also a part of. And we have just had the sweetest friendship since college, since all the post-grad, all the everything in between. She is like an aunt to my son. She was in my wedding. I just absolutely adore her. She is one of the wisest people that I know, and I'm so happy for y'all to get to hear from her today. So, Maggie, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. Okay, so to get started, let's do a little icebreaker, something just super easy, or maybe it's not easy. You tell me. Where or what have you been reading in your Bible recently?
So this is so exciting. It's such a great day for this question for me. So I just finished the Bible recap, the year in the Bible. And you might be thinking it is, well, I don't know when you're listening to this, but we're recording this on February 22nd. So you might be thinking that is not the correct day to finish it, but that is okay. And it has been the greatest journey. So today I read Revelation, but yeah, that's what I've been reading recently.
Yay. Look, girl, I never judge how long it takes someone to do especially the Bible recap because it's just so thorough. But it took me 2 years plus to read the Bible recap. So really anytime anyone does it less than that, I'm like, yeah, way to go. But that's such an exciting accomplishment. That's so fun. But okay, so what are you going to read next? Because I feel like that's always, you finish a study and then it's like, where do you go? Where do you go now?
So I was just telling you this about the Bible recap feels like I am drinking from a fire hose. I don't think I used that wording when I was talking to you earlier this week, but it is, you were cranking through the Bible in that Bible reading plan. And it's great and it's so rewarding, but I am so excited to get back to little tiny chunks of scripture and going really, really deep into those. And this is a plug for Savannah as a friend because she gifted me this study in December for Christmas, and it's on the book of John. So that is where I'm going tomorrow.
Oh, I love the book of John.
I know. You inspired me, Claire. I was like, ooh, the Gospels. Let's go there. Yes.
Oh, yeah. John is such a good one.
I'm excited.
So I'm curious because it has been a while since I've seen you and gotten to talk to you. So I would love to just kind of do a little catch up and just kind of see, what does life look like for you right now? What you been up to, girl?
Yeah, let me tell you my whole life story.
Yeah, here we go.
No. How long do you have? No, I first I would like to say I giggled when Savannah said, "Well, I'm a couple years older." Savannah, you're a year older.
I do that all
One
the
whole
time.
year.
I do that all the time. I apologize. I don't know if it's
No,
like
it just made me giggle. It's like, you're not that old.
my sister frequently makes me feel old, and so I just assume that I'm like so much older than everyone. But then I'm like, no, you're really not.
No, you're not. Yeah, so like Savannah said, I went to college with Savannah and Claire. I went to Mississippi State University. I got a chemistry degree, and then I went straight into pharmacy school at the University of Tennessee. And then I went straight from pharmacy school into residency at the University of Kentucky for 2 years. I did a year of just general acute care, which is like inpatient hospital, all over, all different patient populations, all different ages and disease states and all of that. And then a second year specifically in pediatrics. Kids are the best, adults are a little gross. And now I am in Nashville, Tennessee, my first job, like post all of that school and training. That was like 10 years of training and school. My first job after all of that at Monroe Carroll Jr. Children's Hospital at Vanderbilt in the gastroenterology clinic. So my technical job title is something along the lines of pediatric gastroenterology clinical pharmacist. And that's what I do with my life.
Wow, that's amazing.
I would need to like refer to my name tag frequently. Like if people ask me my job, I need to be like, 1 second, let me look at this title real quick.
Do you have like an acronym for that, or do you just say the
Yeah,
full
like you
title?
have to say that every time. I mean, I guess you don't have to say it frequently, but still. Yeah, they should look into some abbreviations. Yeah, there you go.
Wow. So, okay, so you live in Nashville now.
Mhm.
Okay, but did you used to live in Kentucky? Is that what you were saying?
Yes, I lived, so after college, Memphis for 4 years, and then Lexington for 2, Lexington, Kentucky, and now I'm in Nashville. So I just keep bebopping around.
Yeah, and Starkville before that. So you've literally been like Starkville, Memphis, Kentucky, Nashville. So what has that been like? Just the consistent moving.
Yeah, listen, it's tough. It's great and it's fun, and you get to live in a new city every few years. But rebuilding what life looks like in that city can be really difficult. And I will say, I think this transition that I don't know that I would say I'm still going through, so to speak. Like I live here now, right? I work here now. I'm building my life here now. But this, like the residency to now transition has probably been my hardest. Just because like college, you get built-in friends really easily. Pharmacy school, you have built-in friends really easily. Residency, you work 12-hour days and you sit in the same office with the same however many people every single day. Like you build those friends and those relationships really easily. And then I am 29, I'm single, I have a puppy, and I moved to Nashville and knew like 1.5 people. So building community here has been way more challenging than I was anticipating. And I think I will eventually look back and it will be so rewarding. But it's slow, but it's good.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling though, because like in school, like you were saying, you really do have those built-in communities one way or another, whether it's through your actual classes or through extracurricular or through, anything you find yourself in. It's easy to do that in a college setting or a school setting in general, or even residency mimics school in a lot of ways. So I think it is something that so many people can relate to, because you're in that setting and you just have like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm making friends, and you're just like so excited for like what's coming next. And then you get to that next point and you're in the real world, and you're not that, I have a love-hate relationship with that phrase of like, once you get to the real world, because you're very much still in the real world in those settings. But like when you're in like a full-time job and you're living what you went to school for, what do you when you're in those, you realize, oh wait, I don't have these same friends. We all kind of went our separate ways, and maybe I don't have the easiest time connecting with my coworkers, or maybe I don't have very many coworkers at all. I'm sure that creates a feeling of just like, what do I do? How do I find this community? And so I'd love to hear you share just like what your experience has been like just in that like making the real world, or however you want to call it, how have you tried to lean into that adjustment more?
Yeah. So I do think it's important to start that conversation back pre that transition, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I did the 2 years of residency, and 3/4 of the way through that 2 years, so about this time last year, I was starting to look for jobs. That may sound really early, like you won't be done with residency until June. Why are you looking for jobs in January, February, whatever? But that's just how like clinical pharmacy works. Mm-hmm. So you're in this kind of like pre-transition period. You're in this weird in between of like, I'm going to move somewhere, and I was interviewing for a couple of buckets of jobs, I'll say, like different specialties within pediatrics. And I interviewed at 5 different jobs, I think. And there was one here or one there that I was like, this is going to be it. Like, I'm going to interview for this one job and it's going to be great. Like, I feel good about it. And I went and I interviewed, and the interview was fine. The people were delightful, but something was not right. Like, it wasn't a red flag. Something's not right. It just didn't feel right. And the job that I have now, just everything felt right. Like, I picked my job. I jokingly say I picked my job based on vibes. It did fall into a category of job that, like, yes, I want this job. And it was just happened to be a little bit closer to home than where I was in residency. So that was nice as well. But in the whole process, like, I just really felt the direction of God in choosing this job and in moving to Nashville. And like, listen, yes, it was scary. I am not a big extrovert. I am pretty introverted. Like, I can fake it till I make it kind of introvert, but I have this friend who can make friends with anybody. And like, that is not my skill. I can't just like force people to be my friend, basically. So it's scary. It's scary to move to a city where you like know nobody, and you are doing like a real job for the first time in your life. There's some big, weird transitions in going from like, as a resident, you're not a student. Like, I was a licensed pharmacist for 2 years, but practicing as a resident versus like just straight up practicing is very different. So like a lot of big changes, but I really, really felt like this is where God was leading me. Like, I really had that confidence and that peace and that comfort in making this decision, in making this move. And to be perfectly honest, if I had not had that, I would not have made it. I would have quit my job on day 3. I would have probably tried to move back to Lexington and just said, take me back, I'm so sorry. Or moved home with my parents and like just not been a pharmacist anymore. It was tough. My job was very different than I thought it was going to be. It kind of felt like I was in the twilight zone for a while, if I'm being honest. And it has progressively gotten better, but a couple of things that I feel like set me up for success. And let me preface the rest of this with, I don't have this big bustling community yet. Like, I am still actively building these friendships and like involvement in the places that I have decided to like lay my hat, if you will. A couple of things that I feel like set me up for success was honestly, number one, at the beginning of this last year, was starting the Bible recap. I had been kind of hit or miss in residency. You don't get a lot of sleep. You don't get a lot of free time. I'd been very hit or miss of if I was like spending dedicated time in the Word. But I made the active choice that I was going to give what I could, even if what I could give the Lord was not what I thought it was supposed to look like. Mm-hmm. So even if all that I had in me was listening to the recording of the Bible and then the Bible recap, like devotional video every morning, that's what I was going to do, because I had that to give. The other biggest thing that I felt like has been so helpful in just laying the groundwork of like feeling like I live here was going to a church and choosing it for a while. Mm-hmm. In college, in pharmacy school, and residency, I felt like if a church didn't meet all of the check boxes, like I would give it 1 or 2 weeks maybe, but I was moving on. Mm-hmm. I was church hopping until I felt like I'd found the exact right church. And in a world where none of us are the exact right people, and we live in a very broken world, we're not perfect. You're not going to find a perfect church. And I, at the ripe age of 28, finally figured that out. So I went to a church and I chose it. And I told myself, like, what you've done before was not necessarily wrong, but it didn't work, right? So you have to give it at least a month. And over the course of that, like 4 or 5 weeks, that church really did continue to evolve. And I did really feel like, you know what, it's not perfect. I'm not perfect. The people leading the church aren't perfect, but it's biblically sound. It has all of these like opportunities for growth and service and discipleship. And so that is one of the places that I've really landed in, like going to a small group consistently and serving. And for a little while I was serving in the college ministry, kind of figuring out what that's going to look like this semester for me. But finding that church home and like giving it the time and space it deserves to become that instead of expecting it to happen instantly. And then honestly, the third thing that I would say in this transition, and this is not my usual MO, so I guess to sum this up is stepping out of your comfort zone. But text the people you know. Like, don't wait for them to reach out. You're allowed to reach out and say, like, hey, do you want to go get coffee? Even if you're the new girl in the city. Because chances are their lives are busy and they are of no fault of their own or yours, just not thinking about it.
You look, that was good. I'd mic drop all that. Truly.
Claire says retweet.
I'm like, I feel everything. So you said so many good things, and I want to touch on a lot of it. But one of the things that I just love that you said was, to just recap, was just showing up in the stuff, like showing up and staying consistent with it. Because I think sometimes, and no one really taught us this, or at least no one taught me this, but kind of when you get out of school and then you're in that post-grad life, first of all, you may not get a job right off the bat. There may be this process of like waiting, especially for around when I graduated, it was pandemic world. And so that transition was longer than I expected it to be. And for a lot of my friends, it was too. And even now, just like trying to, have these periods of life where maybe you're in a job and then you feel like, oh, I don't know if this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And then you're looking for other opportunities, or you're transitioning. And that process of finding something new, finding that new opportunity or finding that door open, it takes a lot longer than you expected it would. And I think sometimes we can really question the Lord and question and doubt his faithfulness through it, or what's going to occur. But then also too, I think sometimes in that fear of the unknown, or that time that we're waiting, we actually, if we dig in deeper to God and we dig in deeper to his word and get to know his character more, I think truly it creates more intimacy with the Lord in our relationship, because we're kind of like, oh, even though I'm going through this and I'm walking through the unknown, I don't have to know and understand how everything's going to work. I just have to trust God through it. Like Proverbs 3:5-6, like trust beyond our understanding and trusting in him. So I love that you touched on that, and just kind of, even through the doubts, we still show up to things and we still make an effort, even where we're placed. And sometimes that can be hard if we're on our own and more trying to have to be independent, and we're also maybe, not wanting to step out of our comfort zone. But it's actually so much better when we initiate, because I think sometimes, people are also looking for other people too.
Something that this reminded me of is when we have had, which this is an older episode, but it's when we had Tracy on, Claire, and we were talking about like friendships. And Tracy is one of my friends here in Fairhope, and she is all about, like, she's a connector. She like actively seeks out people that need to know each other. Like, she's just always thinking, like, this person needs to meet this person, and just being that connector. But I think something that I heard you say in a different way is you're being that advocate for yourself. Like, not, sometimes there are times where you do lean on people who have those connections that can get you in and get you, help you find your groove. But also there are going to be seasons where we can't take the back seat in it, and we have to play a role and really push to get ourselves connected. And I loved what you said about like, don't be afraid to reach out to the people that you do know and talk to the people that you know, and don't assume that you're bothering them. Like, or at least for me, if I'm reaching out to someone, like, oh my gosh, I'm bothering them, or I feel embarrassed, and there's literally no reason for us to feel that way, but we just kind of put that on ourselves. And I love that you said that, because I think I think there's probably a lot of people that feel similar to you, who feel lonely, feel like they don't have this connection. I can relate in similar ways as well. But we're waiting in a way that we shouldn't be waiting. We're waiting for someone to reach out to us instead of us being the one to initiate and reach out. There's nothing wrong with being as you said, the new girl, and like reaching out and forming those connections on your own behalf. I don't think that like, I don't know why we're so embarrassed to do that. And I love that you just like took all of that out and you're like, no, I'm going to do this. This is important to me. I want to be your friend, or I want to just have friends. And so I'm going to reach out and I'm going to invest in the people that I know already. Even if it is like a loose connection, I'm going to take advantage of that, you know?
Yeah. And I will say, just to encourage anybody who's feeling similarly, and maybe you do have a little bit of that underlying, like, oh no, am I being a bother kind of mindset? Because I definitely do. I have lived most of my adolescent and young adult life, like very, very concerned that like I am putting too much on somebody else. Um, reframe your thoughts, like take those thoughts captive and reframe them. So, and Savannah sent me this video on Instagram recently, and it just continues to stick in my brain of like, instead of worrying about, was I too much? Was I enough? Was I too loud? Was I think, did I make them smile? Did I bless them today? Did I like put it on your focus on others? I think really removes some of that anxiety, but also points us back to like the heart of community.
So something too that you were talking about with just kind of going through these transitions of moving and starting different life events after college, something that was kind of touching on me was going through similar things of moving to a new place and starting that rebuilding process. Truly for me, sometimes, kind of starting in those places, there's a lot of unknown, there's a lot of fear that can kind of sweep in, and I can get kind of distracted with like the doubts of how this is going to work out. And I want to be hopeful and hope that, it's good and it's going to build fruition. But then there's also that balance of like, okay, but what is this going to look like? How is the Lord going to be faithful in this? And so just kind of curious with that in those transitions, were there times and moments where you felt anxiety or just uncertainty just kind of surround you, where you were just like, I don't know what this is going to look like, and I'm really scared to walk through it? Like, what did you kind of cling on to like move through that uncertainty or that storm? Because I think sometimes we can't really go around it. We have to go through it, and we have to go through it with the Lord. So I'm just curious to know your perspective on that.
Yeah, listen, Claire, if somebody ever tells me, oh, I'm never nervous in the uncertainty, like I'm good. I don't get nervous about that sort of stuff. I don't have any fears in my life. I am convinced they are either not real or they are superhuman. Like I don't know how people don't have, I can understand how people don't have like that underlying anxiety. I understand everybody's brain doesn't work that way, but just like uncertainty is, I think, when the Lord is truly bringing us to our knees, metaphorically, and trying to teach us that full dependence, that full reliance on Him. Because like you just said, you can't get through those times without the Lord. And I think that is really what I've clung on to over the last 6, 7, 8, more than 6 or 7 or 8 months, really the last like full year and beyond. But I think a couple of verses in the last 6 or 7 months have been very consistent about writing my prayers down. And a lot of times my prayers are stream of consciousness, of like me just like literally just having a conversation with the Lord, and like, this is what's coming out of my brain. And I went back and read through some of them last night, and they are just like over and over and over again, the same fluctuation of the hills and valleys of like, this is great. I'm so nervous. I have this fear. Lord, help me have the faith. Help my unbelief. All of those things. To a couple of verses that I would just share that I have clung to in those times are, the first one is Psalm 23:4. Psalm 23 as a whole is a chapter that my Sunday school teacher at like 6 or 7 years old told me to memorize and pray when I couldn't fall asleep, because that's what she does. I'm a terrible sleeper. And listen, if there's nothing else that I memorize in my life, that one's in there.
That's awesome.
But Psalm 23:4 says, even though, and where I was pulling this from had a blank. So like, even though, like, fill in the blank with whatever you need it to be in that phase of your life, you were with me. The actual verse says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you were with me. But if he's walking with you through the valley of the shadow of death, he's walking with you through the aisles of Walmart, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the first one that I've really clung to. So the next one that I would very much recommend kind of storing away in your heart is, I am certain I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart be courageous. Wait for the Lord. And that's Psalm 27:13 and 14. And I think we do have to learn that the goodness of the Lord might not be what we think the goodness of the Lord should be, right? It might look very, very different. There are parts of my life that look exactly the way that 16-year-old Maggie thought they would look. I was 100% confident I would be a pharmacist. I knew I would not be working in a chain pharmacy. I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I wanted to do pediatrics. There are other parts of my life that don't look the way that I thought they would. I gotta be honest, thought I'd be married at 22, and I am not married at 22. And that is okay. I still see the goodness of the Lord in the big things and the small things and the mundane and the exciting, and just being able to cling on that and to know that, like, his goodness does not escape me even here on this earth is really reassuring. And then the last one, I'm going to pull a snippet out of it, and I have this written down, so I don't know exactly what verse what I'm going to read is, but the full passage is Romans 5:1-11. It says, we boast in the hope of the glory of God. And not only that, but we also boast in our afflictions, because we know that affliction produces endurance. Endurance produces proven character, and proven character produces hope. This hope will not disappoint us, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, who he has given to us. So you mentioned the word hope, and I've been talking back and forth with a couple of different friends, both for myself and for them, over and over, of like, I want to cling on to that hope. But it is so easy to let the little distractions and the little fears and the little, like, oh, well, that didn't go the way I thought it would, to grab onto that hope and to pull it away from me. So just knowing that, like, hope isn't always this sunshine and rainbows and butterflies, like, walk to get to that hope. It is from affliction that creates endurance, that creates character, that then creates that hope. Hope is built over time with the Lord, time in life, time in the Word, time with people who build you up and don't tear you down. It's a free gift given to us from the Lord, but it does, I think, take intention to hold on to.
And it's also a gift that we are given by him. And that's kindness too, just to be able to know that we're given hope in this life, but we're also given that eternal hope too. And knowing that no matter what we face in this life, that Jesus has already overcome the victory. And so even through our circumstances and friends' circumstances and the brokenness in the world, like, a kindness that the Lord is sovereign and good and faithful through and through.
Yeah. And just to add to, like, the kindness of the Lord, one kindness, this is a freebie, that I have learned recently that is semi-related to what we're talking about. It is so kind. I did not realize this all through growing up. I was a planner growing up. I wanted to know every little step. I wanted to know what it would all look like. I didn't want any surprises. The fact that the Lord does not give us our whole life laid out before us from day one is such a kindness. It's such a kindness. It removes so much of the anxiety and the fear and the like, will I mess that up? What if this doesn't actually happen on this timeline? Like the waiting around for the things that we know will happen. It's such a kindness that he only reveals a step at a time.
And I'm reminded too lately that, we get surprised by things because we can't see the full picture, but Jesus is not surprised by any of it. He knows exactly what's going to occur. He's sovereign over all of it, and he holds all things together. So it's a comfort to me that the Lord is so sovereign and that he knows everything that's going to happen. And it's like, oh, okay, like even me moving to this new city, like the Lord's with me in that, and he already knew I was going to go there. So just a kindness that he sees our entire life and everything through it.
Something I've also learned in the same topic is, he's not surprised by what we encounter, if it is something that we're surprised by, he's not surprised. But something I have never realized before is that he is also not surprised by our reaction to it. Like, because we might be like, oh gosh, this thing happened, I didn't anticipate it, and then we respond and we're maybe a little chaotic, and we're just, we're kind of sent into this like tailspin where we really have to have complete dependence on the Lord. Or maybe we don't react the way we wish we did, we reacted differently, and we kind of have to like pull ourselves back into truth. I used to think, why would God have this happen? Like, why does he like, he let this thing happen, but then why would he do this if he knows that this is my reaction, that I'm going to have these doubts, or I'm going to have these things that I'm going to have to wrestle with? And I was talking to my counselor, and she was like, well, Savannah, he's not surprised that you are, just like he's not surprised that this event happened that's causing you to react this way. He also knew when this event happened in your life that you would react to it that way, and he chose to do it anyways. And I don't know why that was so revolutionary to me. Like, maybe that is just, kind of, you understand that. But that was truly a groundbreaking moment for me, where I was like, oh, like not only does he know the event and he's not surprised by that the way we are caught off guard, but he chose to do it anyway, knowing that this might cause Maggie to feel uncomfortable. This might cause Maggie to feel uncertain or doubt herself or more in her life or whatever, might cause her to wonder, why is this happening? But he chose to do it anyways in those moments, because he wants us to learn whatever that lesson is. Or sometimes it's not a lesson, and he just simply wants us to come to him, and he wants that moment of connection with us. And he's not trying to teach us anything other than, I love you, and I chose to do this in your life, even if you don't understand why. And I just think that's so beautiful and like so relevant to this like overarching conversation that we've had today. And I think with that said, I would love to ask you a question that we always ask. And it's a little bit, I'm going to make it twofold in this moment. So I would love to know how you've seen God meet you in like everyday moments, just like as you're living your life, as you're, going through the mundane motions. Like, how have you seen God meet you in those moments? And at the same time, what does it look like for you to live on purpose and for a purpose? Since our whole mission here is being on purpose, being for a purpose. So let's like kind of mesh those two together. And I'd love to hear your take on that.
I think, at least for myself, I am very forgetful. So I often will forget, what was I praying about 3 days ago? And to be able to see how the Lord is showing up for me in the mundane and also the big, bold prayers that I pray, being able to look back on those prayers and read through them every once in a while has been so, so helpful, because he shows up in so many little places that I would never have thought for him to show up in. He shows up in the, I pray the prayer of, Lord, help me with my job. Help me with discernment in my job. It's not what I thought it would be. I want to do these big things. And then he shows up in the one provider that was originally a little skeptical, and now they're coming and they're saying, come help me with this patient. Or he's showing up in the friend that I'm asking for this big flourishing community, and he shows up in the friend texting me, hey, do you want to go to the Nutcracker with us? He shows up in those little bitty moments, the friend to friend connections. Maybe my friend doesn't live here, but she knows a friend that lives here. And that friend and I are so similar and get along so well. And like, I am sure in the coming years, like that will continue to flourish. He shows up in those little bitty places in the, I have a really tough day and a friend texts and asks like, hey, how can I pray for you today? And they don't know. I haven't told them anything about how my day has been going. Or, I can't take the thoughts captive. They continue to swirl. And then I wake up and I feel very refreshed, and I feel very much like the Lord did give me that rest that I asked for and that I needed to be able to better focus on Him and to take those thoughts captive. And I think, honestly, for me, I feel like that also answers the what does it look like to live on a purpose and for a purpose. And the Lord's like ultimate purpose for creation is to glorify Him. So how am I in a day-to-day basis glorifying Him? And to me, that both looks like, what does my relationship with Him look like, and what does my relationship with other people look like? So for me, it's that intentional time that I spend with the Lord every morning, even if it doesn't look like the perfect Bible study that I was raised to think that like I had to have every single day to be able to do that. It's the heart behind why am I doing that. It's not the checkbox and what it looks like. It's how I'm speaking to the people that I get on the elevator with. It's how I'm going to a patient's room and, talking through the medication and like sharing the knowledge and competency that I have in a way that they are going to be able to handle and understand and then move forward in their lives with. It's just about glorifying the Lord with the gifts that He has given me.
Oh, I think that was so good. I love simplifying it to on purpose and for a purpose is living out your life by glorifying the Lord. And then I also love that everyone's answer to that question, what that looks like, is different, but it still answers that question, or it echoes that message of you're glorifying the Lord through how you live. But everyone's perspective on that tends to be a little different every time we ask that question, to hear how people respond to it and what that means to them and what the Holy Spirit has told them. This is what it looks like for your life to have purpose is so cool.
Yes. And I just love how you just reiterated so much of like, even what you were saying, Sav, to how it's so unique of how everybody's answer is so different, but it's so personal to them, and how God cares so much for that personal attribute that we all have with Him, that personal relationship that we get to dive into with Him. And He loves how we connect with Him on that personal level and what it looks like in our every day. So Maggie, I thank you so much for coming on today. It's been so good to catch up and just hear all the things, lots of relatable things that I can relate to, but also I think from what other people can too. And I just hope that it's an encouragement to people in their season of life where they're at right now. And thank you so much for your wisdom and just your encouragement for continuing to pursue the Lord and striving in whatever season that looks like for you.
Yeah, thank y'all for having me. I've had so much fun with you guys.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to this episode of On Purpose and For a Purpose. Don't forget to hang out with us over on Instagram at On Purpose Podcast so that you can be the first to see updates and hear about upcoming episodes. And hey, if you're loving being a part of our community, we would love it if you could leave a review and share this episode with your friends. We can't wait to go through this study together and learn more about what it means to show up on purpose and for a purpose.